Firstly, an absolutely huge welcome to you, and thank you so much for being here with us today. We're truly grateful because we really respect your time. Kieran sadly is having a technical glitch. His camera's not going to work, but you can hear him. Kieran, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry about the camera. It's just a bit of an ongoing issue.
Temperamental. It must be a teenager. Cool. So I'm going to introduce myself, then if Em introduces herself and Kieran himself, and then what we'll do is Em will do the first poll. Is that correct, Em? Cool. Fantastic. So I'm Jackie. I'm the founder of aDoddle, and I absolutely I love what I do every single day of the week. I meet the most amazing people who run the most incredible organisations or volunteer for them, or people who've needed help and support. And I just think I'm truly blessed for the work that I do. And I thank you very much for the work that you do in your communities, because it's huge. You make a difference in people's lives every day, quite often without even realising it. So that's who I am. Em.
Thanks, Jackie. So my name's Em Flint. I've been involved with aDoddle for about 3 years now, one way or another. I met Jackie 3 years ago. I think, like a lot of people attending this webinar today, I've worn lots of hats in my career and in my life. So over the last 25 years, I've worked for lots of different public sector organisations and charities and small community groups. And Jackie and I met in one such at a training by Action to Prevent Suicide, and we got chatting in the kitchen, and she told me about aDoddle, and I just thought it was wonderful. And earlier this year, Jackie was able to offer me a couple of hours a week supporting aDoddle with social media and PR, and I'm really glad to be involved. I've sent out many newsletters in my time, everything from like big national ones with the NSPCC down to a small one from the community hospital or the local kids drama group. Lots to share, but also a lot to learn, because I'm sure that people here will have had experiences of things that have worked really, really well and things that they've tried and have fallen over. So we're all here to learn together, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you all a little bit in the next hour.
Cool. Fantastic. Just to add one thing to that, so Em's amazing role with me a few hours a week is actually as a support worker. So I actually have dyslexia and a couple of other different bits and pieces, and she helps me to do my work, which is amazing, and it's made an incredible difference to me being able to do my work, and it's made my work more pleasurable on a daily basis. So that's a huge thank you to Em. Yeah, definitely. Kieran, over to you.
Yeah, I'm Kieran. I'm one of the Kickstart trainees working with aDoddle. I'm working as a social media and PR trainee, and I've been pretty involved in the newsletter as of late, so that's why I'm here as a speaker. It's just been a great experience working with aDoddle, and happy to be here.
So again, I'm going to say Kieran hasn't given you enough about him in some ways. One of the things that we've discovered about Kieran while he's been working with us, he is the most incredible journalist. His journalistic skills are second to none. And yeah, so Em's agreeing with that. And I think in however many years' time, we'll see his name around some really interesting pieces around just research, and he's just got this way with words that's really good. So Kieran, you might be blushing now and glad that your camera's not working, so I apologize for that. What I'm going to do now is ask if you could each in the chat say which organization you're from, and feel free, if you've got a LinkedIn link or anything like that that you want to share, feel free to share it. I'm going to click share so that you can see the sort of slide shots. We can come away from those any time if anybody wants to come on stage, ask something, talk or chat or whatever, so we can turn them on and off. And then Em will do the poll, the first one. So it worked. That's a relief. Can I check that you can still hear me? Because earlier when we did a test, my mic went off.
I can, Jackie. If anybody can't hear, if you wouldn't mind just dropping in the chat that you're having difficulties, and we'll work together to solve them.
Yep.
Thanks.
Amber says that she can still hear.
So while Em will start the first poll in a second, but sort of housekeeping, right? This is being recorded now. So if you don't want to come on stage, you don't want to be seen, or you want your question to be asked anonymously, so that it's not, their name's not attached to it because it will be on the recording, please just be aware that it is being recorded. Okay. Health and safety. There are no fire alarm testings due. And if you've got them at your end, then I'm really sorry, I don't have those details. Please ensure that wherever you are, you're sat comfortably, safely, you've got a drink or whatever else. Unfortunately, we can't provide refreshments because it's not in person. But it's just, you know, enjoy it. And I've got the will cover bit here. And believe it or not, I haven't opened up my little bit with my memory joggers. I could have really done with them. So Em, if you can remember them, then fine. But otherwise, it will be like a magical mystery tour as we go through.
So just to give a bit of an outline to it, we've basically got 3 subject areas with a bit of a presentation with what we've learned. We've got 3 poll questions and an opportunity to discuss, and we'll be using the chat function for you to share your experiences. If at any time anybody thinks they would really like to speak, or has a subject that they have got something that they'd like to share, if you just put an asterisk in the chat, I'll just do one to show you what I mean by that. So just put a little star in the chat bar, and then we will know that you're wanting to speak, and we'll invite you up. So don't be scared. As Jackie said earlier, this is the first time for some of us that we've run a webinar using the AirMeet function. So we're looking forward to seeing what works, and we might find 1 or 2 things that don't. So please bear with us, and thank you for your forbearance as we work it out together.
There is actually down the right hand side, you've got a few different things. You've got chats, so you can see that. You've got Q&A, so you can put in any questions there. But because there aren't too many of us today, you can actually also add your questions in the sidebar, in the chat bit, if you want to. There's the polls, there's raised hands, so I think you can raise your hand as well. And then the other one, I think, is just for me. It was if it was one of these evergreen presentations and you just wanted to put a video in and then say hello and then just put a video and leave it. That's not quite how we work. So that's there. There will be time for a Q&A at the end, but you are invited to ask questions during it, and there's no problem with that. And just before we do the Q&A, we said that we would do the giveaway with the book Do Open by David Hyatt. I can't recommend it enough. It's about a 2-hour read or a 2-hour listen, so it's not long, but he covers so many incredible things around the values of it and respecting people's time, which is so incredibly important. And then at the end, there'll be a contact, information, but I'm also happy, or one of the team will put my direct contact email in there so that you can get in contact if you've got any questions or want to follow up with anything. So that's that one. Cool.
Okay, so poll number 1, and this is the first time I've ever done this. I'm going to put a poll question up for you. The question is, do you already have a newsletter? So you can put your poll results in. I've pressed publish. You should hopefully be able to see a simple yes, no answer. But if you wouldn't mind following up in the chat by telling us how often you send it out, if you do have one. So that's great. I can see answers coming in already. So some people have already got a newsletter.
So I'm guessing that people have found that the little poll one, when there's a live poll, there's a little red dot up by the poll tab at the top that I can see here. So yeah, that's quite cool.
Great. So it looks like people who are present do already have a newsletter. Would anybody like to share in the chat how often they send it out? And while you're doing that, maybe I'll talk about some different newsletter experiences that I've had. So I've worked in places that have had a newsletter that they've sent out. One really big charity, which I won't name, we're going back 20 years, but they had a monthly newsletter that they sent out come hell or high water, and didn't perhaps stop to think whether people were receiving it, and weren't great at inviting feedback on that newsletter. I've had other organisations that are doing amazing things and very focused on the work that they're doing, but forgetting to let the wider world know through a newsletter, and everything in between, really. So doesn't look like, oh, we've got something in the chat here.
Cool.
So I hope you don't mind me sharing. Lisa has said that Lisa's got a general newsletter, a schools only newsletter. They each go out monthly, and a members only letter that goes out weekly. Kim is sharing that, there's a newsletter twice a year, plus e-bulletins 2 to 3 times per month. Currently to members only, but considering now about how to widen this. Yeah. So it looks like we've got some good examples there of regular newsletters and different frequencies for different audiences.
I mean, that to me, that's absolutely, fantastic that that's what you're doing already. It's brilliant. I mean, I know we've got a slide and an order of slides, but there are a couple of things because of our chats beforehand in the networking space that can be used within AirMeet. And I'm thinking about, Kim, what you said about maybe widening that audience, and you've put it in there. And I don't know, there's going to be a poll question about what software, and we're going to ask about what sort of software service or whatever you use. The one that we've just moved to, which I'll happily share, you can actually do like A/B testing. So what you could potentially do is create your ordinary newsletter that you're doing for that group of people. So you know that that's the style that they're going to be happy with it in. And if you split your lists into these regular ones, but then the widening one, you could potentially just change the wording slightly in the one to the widening one and send that out to there. So you use the draft of the original one that goes out, and you just make some slight changes and see whether or not that's getting the feedback, and see how many opens that does. So you could send the original one out to everybody to start with, and then on another month do it and split it. So there are potentially some quite interesting things that you can do depending on the service that you use. But you could even do that if you're doing it, you're managing your email recipients list yourself. Have it set up, have 2 pages set up in your Excel sheet or whatever, or have a different category for them and do it slightly differently there. And you might have some you're nodding your head, but you might also be grimacing at me as well, which is a potential. You could be grinning, but
no, I'm definitely agreeing with you, Jackie, with everything that you said, and I'm also smiling because I see we've been joined by Jenny from Dawlish Garden Society, who's just shared in the chat that they're now publishing every 3 months. I mean, that's a great frequency, I think, for a smaller society. Dawlish Garden Society, I know it, a lovely organisation.
Oh, because that's in our local area. So
yeah.
Jenny, I'm not that far away. So yeah.
So welcome, Jenny.
Yeah, definitely. Now that's really interesting because I can't see Jenny's message in there. So I'm just thinking, oh gosh, why not? Or maybe there's a down arrow or something. Oh yeah, look, there you are. I'm learning how to use that chat, and when there's a red dot, it means there's something further down. So apologies for my, So yeah, I mean, what's your experience with sending it out? Would anybody like to come and join us on stage as to what they find to do with how often they send it and why they send it out? Is it not only how often you send it out, but do you think about the time of day that you send it out?
Yeah, and for those of us with longer memories, time of day is quite a new one, isn't it? I can remember sending newsletters out in the post. It was a huge postal effort at the end of every month. We'd have hundreds and hundreds of envelopes all over the floor of the office. We'd be stuffing the envelopes, and at the last minute somebody would say, oh, we want to send everybody a badge, and we'd be putting the badges in the envelopes. And but of course these days we can be really quite targeted in how we send our newsletter and think about the optimum time for it to hit people's inboxes. So there's all kinds of clever tricks that we can use these days to do it digitally. I can't see anybody offering to come up and talk on that one, Jackie. So I think we're free to go.
Jenny sort of said that she can't get a camera to work. That's absolutely fine, Jenny. Don't worry. Kieran's having the same problem with his, so that's no problem at all. So, Jenny, just to catch up, so you've got you publish every 3 months for the Dawlish Garden Society, and Kim's 2 to 3 times. So your e-bulletins that are going out as well currently, widening that. So out of interest, with your hosting, and I'm trying to remember what the next poll question is. It's there are different benefits. So self-hosting, It's low risk and low reward. Okay, so you can do that, and you can send it out, you can set up your email list and everything else. It's maybe a little bit harder to manage. It's a little bit harder to manage maybe with GDPR now. So having a think about that. So what is that? And if you are self-hosting, is it worth looking at what opportunities there are out there for you to actually be able to manage it using a system? And if you are is anybody self-hosting at the moment?
So by self-hosting, I guess we define that as something like keeping an Excel spreadsheet or a list of who you send it to and manually attaching it as a document to an email. That would be an example of self-hosting. Am I right, Jackie? And
Yeah.
got a lovely comment from Kim there about that they send out a newsletter whenever the person who sends them out has time to do it. I know we've got some volunteers in the room, so we can all relate to that one. And self-hosting. So yeah, we've got an example there of a volunteer that's self-hosting.
Cool, fantastic. Kieran, have you got anything to add? Because you're here with us, and I'm doing my typical thing of talking a lot. Have you got anything you want to bring up?
Not particularly in regards to self-hosting, no. I'm just noticing Lisa sent a message into the chat, which is interesting, which is I often schedule ahead, and her school's newsletter gets a better open rate if it arrives earlier in the week and day.
Oh, that's good. Do you, Lisa, out of interest, do you find that there's a time of day where there is a peak as to when it is opened? Because I'm guessing that you use something. And Kim said that yes, she's self-hosting. Lisa has put the asterisk. Right,
so Lisa, I think you need to go to the raised hands section and raise your hand, and then I think Jackie can invite you in. I think that's how it works.
Cool, there you are. Right then, I've just handed the mic. Here comes Lisa. That worked easily. Hi, Lisa.
Hi. I don't know if you can hear me yet.
We can.
Yeah. Because it's not showing me as on camera, so but if you can hear me, there's no way I can type as fast as that, so it's a lot easier to speak. But I found with schools, and I've worked in schools for a long time, so I understand it. But if I can get an email out to them earlier in the week and earlier in the month and earlier in the day, it's more chance of getting open. So I know that if I send a newsletter at say 4 o'clock on a Thursday, even though they might see it, and even though it will be sat in their email box the next day, they will have had another 100 emails come in. So they don't actually open it unless, I mean, it's not a hard and fast rule, but in general, if they are at their desk and the email comes in, I know they open it because my open rates are quite good. But if it languishes in there a bit, no, it's just moved to history.
That's really interesting. And so I wonder if it, well, not I wonder, I'm really certain from having talked to other people in other organisations that depending on who their audience is, depends on when they get a better opening time. And so you're saying yours is early in morning. We found our peak is about 11 o'clock in the day. It's almost as though that might be when somebody's having a coffee break or something like that. They've got their morning work done that they have to do when they first get into the office, because it's mostly charities, community groups and organisations. Hi, we can see you now, Lisa.
Yeah, you have to manually turn on your camera if you're invited up.
Okay. Thank you. We've learned something. Really appreciate it. So for us, we find that that's the best time. So up until the first lockdown, we were doing a newsletter really regularly, and we were getting a really good open rate, which was really nice. So we'd sort of learnt that bit there. We've only recently started our newsletter up again because we have been so busy with the work that we were doing, you know. So like that comment just now, I think, was it from Kim about sending it out when you've got the time, or team members got the time. That was a bit how it was. But it was something we really wanted to get back to, because we'd had a couple of messages from people, well, in fact, more than a couple of messages to people saying, you know, we were looking forward to getting the awareness days, you know, so that they could help plan their social media that they were doing. So we're starting to try and do it in a slightly different way now. But there were things that people were looking forward to having. But that digresses it a little bit at the moment. So you find early in the morning, early in the week, early in the month. and that's the best.
That's when I'm sending out a newsletter that goes specifically to schools.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because of the nature of how they work. And I know, schools, if it's usually the school office that receive it, and quite frequently they'll get 200, 300, 400 emails a day. So if they don't open it, it doesn't become priority after that.
Yeah.
Because there'll be other issues take over. So for me, if I'm sending that news to schools, I schedule it ahead to go out at 7 o'clock in the morning, because there's no way I'm going to remember to get up and do it manually.
Yeah, that's the beauty of scheduling, isn't it? You don't have to be there to press the button and make it go. But I've got a question for Lisa and for Jackie, really. So, and there's no right answer. I'm just curious. How did you establish what the best time was to send that newsletter? Was it just trial and error, or a hunch, or did you use some software? What did you do?
For me, just trial and error. I mean, I use a paid hosting, but I'm still learning how to use it, and I still only scratch the surface. At the time when I was working in schools, I couldn't send it out with a paid hosting. It had to go out just from my my Microsoft Office account, so I never knew what was happening. And it's just, I've just had to learn as I'm going along. I've learned by mistakes, and I'm probably not doing it right now, but I just keep sending them out and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I don't think there is a right way, really. There's so much about trial and error, but that's what's useful about putting our heads together today, is we can hear what's worked. So so thank you. How about you, Jackie? How did you arrive at your 11 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, trial and error, and watching. And I think so going on to sort of like then the paid hosting, bit of this slide is, by having paid hosting, you've got the access to analytics. And so you can see what time of day you sent it out, and then from when it was sent out, how quickly it was opened. And we slowly realized that if we sent it around the quarter to 11, 11:15 phase, that actually you got a peak of it being opened. And then it might be the following day, you got some around the same time. So it was almost as though people had gone into their email box and then they were coming back. But we also found we got regular people that were definitely openers, which was really good. And we would find that people would message us if we'd put a question in there or something, or we'd shared something, we'd asked a question, people would email us back. And that was a really good thing to be able to see by having paid hosting. And also, if we put a link to something, again, you could see what times they were being clicked. And we found that sort of time of the day, but we then found people who came back again afterwards might have come back early evening, back to the newsletter again. So they were doing a second viewing and clicking through then. And I think that helps you to know whether the content that you're sharing is something that people actually want to read. Because if they come back to your newsletter and open it up again, then you're actually hitting the spot somewhere along the line. So it's worth looking at those reports. So that's a really interesting one around the paid hosting. So I know somebody who's had their business for a number of years now. They are sending out regularly 2 newsletters every month. They do not go in and they do not check it. They think because they've got a list of nearly 1,000 that's really good. But I've had access to their back end to be able to see it because I know them and whatever else. And I know that from about that 1,000 plus, they are maybe only getting about 5 people a month who regularly open it. And they are doing all this work and putting all this effort in. Now, they've been going at it for quite a long time. And so to me, that's where we've got a slide further along about the tortoise and the hare, which will make a bit more sense of this. But that's where that thing of, if you can have the paid hosting and see that, you can know whether there are changes that you might need to make it so that more people open it. Because if you're spending that much time on doing the newsletters, but nobody's opening it and you're not getting feedback in any way, shape or form, is that a good use of your time? And I think that's a question that needs to be asked after a while. But I do think there's persistence that's needed as well. So another thing with paid hosting, and when you look to who you're having with your hosting, find out if you can export your contacts. Because if you can't export your contacts so that you could move to another hosting company for your newsletter, then in effect, they've got you, they're holding you hostage. and also to find out whether if you're moving to a different one or going from self-hosting to a paid one, can you import your contacts into that so that you're not starting again from scratch? Most hosting companies now will, if people aren't opening them, they can say if it's blacklisted and whatever else, they'll start filtering your list for you as it goes on. But they're just a few things to think about. I mean, I'm just trying to think whether Kieran, from looking at the reports, would you think Kieran, I've covered the things that we've seen recently in the reports from the last couple we've sent out?
Yeah, definitely. I think you've covered everything that we've noticed. I'm just noticing Lisa in the chat has said that they know a lot of links about grant funding, and she can see which links people are opening, which is I don't think is something that we've necessarily noticed with Sendinblue.
I must admit I have, and that's in the last one I've had a look, and it's been quite interesting. And with the links, so you can set up a link in a newsletter to open up the person's email software. So if you want them to email you, to make it easier for them, you can set the link up in a special way, and it will open up their email one, and even put a subject line in if you put it in there. And so then if you've done your link like that, you can see how many people have contacted you through that as well. So that's quite a nice statistic to be able to go back, because you're knowing whether you're engaging, and you can go back 6 months later and so go, oh, okay, this newsletter, we had a lot of people get in contact with us. Then go back into the newsletter, have a look at it again. What was it about that newsletter that was different or that stood out, that got people interacting with you? So it's actually quite nice having that paid hosting from that perspective. But let's be very honest, we don't all have budgets that are huge, and we can be restricted by it, and that can be off-putting. And so we think we've got to self-host. And I might be going out of this. I'll tell you what, Em, let's get you to do the next poll, because then the next bit I say will be in order.
That's what, I was about to say, I can't believe we're already half an hour into our hour together, and we're starting to drift on to the next poll question. So it's quite a simple one, and I've already had one answer in the chat from somebody. So do you use newsletter software at all? So I'll publish the poll there. And if you can put in the chat which one you have used. I've seen somebody already mentioning MailChimp in the chat earlier. And the results should be coming up on people's screens now. So it looks like most people here either use it at present or are familiar with newsletter software. So maybe to explain what we mean by that, it's using a tool that will help you to put your newsletter together and send it out. So it's very different from making a document and emailing it to people, or printing a document and pushing it through someone's door. So yeah, so go ahead, Jackie.
That's all right. Can I just try something? Because there's a way that you can do show on stage if somebody's done. So if you can't find where the poll is, up at the top, you should have a little on the right hand side. It goes chats, Q&A, polls. So to be able to answer the poll, you should be able to go there. I think that's how you see it. If it's not, I'd love to have some feedback in the chats, but you can then vote on it. I don't know. It might overtake your chat thing. I don't quite know that one, but there is a little button here that goes show on stage. Ha! There you are. Hey, look at that. There you are. And you can see when people vote and how many people do. Right, cool. Sorry. That was me discovering something new about it. I'm going to go to the next slide. Well, before we go to the next slide, thinking about whether you use paid or not, we use one called Sendinblue. And we've used MailChimp in the past, and another one, I'm trying to think what it's called. So two quite big, well-known ones we've used in the past. But about 12 months or so ago, we moved over to Sendinblue. And you can actually have an account with Sendinblue for nothing. And you can send, I think it is up to 1,000 emails a month. So say you sent 4 out a month, or these the email bulletins that you were talking about, Kim, and whatever else. As long as you don't go over that, it costs you nothing. And it will spread them out over time, and it will help you to do that, and you can get used to using it. And that's sort of really helpful, but you can actually start to see the analytics then. And then you can choose whether you want to go to a paid one. You can import your list and you can export your list. But you can also, once you start paying, you only pay for the number of emails you send out each month. You don't pay for the number of people you have on your contacts list. So if you had 3 or 4 different contacts lists, but you only sent out to this one once a year and this one another year, but it built up to more than 1,000 contacts, you're not paying because of that. You are only paying based on the number that you send out to. And I think that's something that's really good. And I think it's something that's missing with other ones. But I would love to know. I think I can see Lisa says she uses Get Response. Oh, I'd love to know what that's like. I've not used that one. I'm just having a look. Sorry, I'm having to scroll. Kieran, can you see any other comments down there for me?
Yep. Kim has just said that she uses Canva as well as MailChimp. And Jenny said that she doesn't actually do the newsletter herself, so she's not sure how it's produced.
So hopefully, Jenny, that might be a useful one for you to be able to take back and ask that question, because if they're paying and they're paying based on the number of contacts, it might not make a difference depending on the size of your list. Actually doesn't matter. You know, it's not the biggest list that has the best impact. If you only had 50 people on your list, but all 50 people opened it and all 50 people were getting value and benefit from what you're sharing, that's a powerful list. Let's be honest, it's not about the size. Size doesn't count there.
And is it worth sharing what a good open rate looks like? Because I think sometimes people can get disheartened when they first get their newsletter software, if they've been self-publishing and they move to the newsletter software and find that only, maybe 17% of people open. That's actually a really good rate. Anything over 15% open rate is a good rate. Because we're all busy people, aren't we? We don't have the time and luxury to read every newsletter that comes our way. So if you've caught the eye of 15% of your audience, then you're doing all right.
Yeah, we've just recently been doing some training that we had put on for our Kickstart trainees from a marketing company, and he used to market for Bournemouth Football Club and spent 4 years with them building their newsletter list. Because the power of a newsletter is you, and your email list is you own it. And I think we should have made this point at the beginning. You could have great social media pages, great Twitter, great Facebook, great Instagram. But if something like that outage the other week goes down, how do you communicate with your audience if you haven't started to build up your newsletter, even if it only goes out twice a year? You don't have that list of those people or some of those people that were interacting with you on social media. You have no way to contact them and you don't own it. If somebody hacked your account, you could lose it overnight. If Facebook, Twitter, Instagram thought that you posted something that was inappropriate, they could shut down your account. You have no recourse with them at all. And we have met so many organizations over the last few years who have lost their lists because everything was done through social media. They've lost their method of contacting. Em just put her hand up there.
Yeah, just a bit of a cautionary tale. But when I first, I set myself up as a freelance social media and PR person for not-for-profit things about 7-8 years ago now, and I thought I would create myself 2 Facebook accounts. I'd have one for me to have fun and share pictures of crochet and laugh about cats doing silly things, and one for work. And I was in breach of Facebook's community standards, so my work account was closed down. There was no notice. I didn't get an email or anything. I just logged on one morning and found that I'd lost everything. And like Jackie says, I had no recourse. I didn't pay to use Facebook at the time. Facebook ads were still quite a new thing, so I hadn't given them an awful lot of money at that stage. You're not in control with these big social media companies. We know.
But you own your newsletter list. And when Em came and first started working with me a few months ago, one of the first things that she was helping me with was the fact I had lost access to manage my pages. They hadn't closed them down. But because I didn't go on Facebook and Instagram very often myself, they said they couldn't prove who I was. And the fact that I'd started them up and I still had my account and all these different bits and pieces, they didn't believe me. And it took 4 to 6 weeks or something to get access back to them. And it was going round and round and whatever else. Luckily, we hadn't lost them, but our Facebook page, the main one's got just over 12,000 followers. We've built up over time, and if we hadn't managed to find a way, we would have lost that overnight, which was what gave me the kick up the bottom to say get the newsletter up and running, because I'd let it slip while everything was going on with the last 18 months. I'd let it slip because we were working on other things, and it was silly of me, to be quite honest. But we're really amazed with everybody. Right, I'm aware of the time, and I'm aware that so Lisa is saying that she looked at Sendinblue but didn't get to integrate it with other software. Kieran, do feel free to interrupt me when you see the things, because you know me, I will yab till the cows come home.
Okay.
Thank you.
We've definitely not call it yabbing, Jackie. It's you've got so much experience to share. And I just wonder, so what's the time now? Oh, we're already at 2:35. So do you want to tell us about, that's a good segue into Keep It Brief, isn't it? Do you want to tell us about that?
So keep it brief. With every time somebody opens a newsletter or an email bulletin or something like that, it's about respecting their time. So if you keep it brief, cut down the noise. What do they want to hear? And is it actually about you and your organization and what you do? Or is it about the pain points that what you do are helping to solve? What's that conversation? What's that nice bit? How do they like to hear about it from you? Do they want it in a conversational manner so that they feel welcomed to it? Or is it more authoritarian, coming from a council that needs to have a certain standard and a quality based on that, and you need to be very careful about what you're doing but brief in it? So try and cut the noise, but respect their time and give value. They're the key top tips. And remember, it's not about you, it's about the difference it makes to them. Because if it's all about you and not the pain points you're solving for them and the difference it will make to them, people will soon lose interest. And we've made mistakes, we will make mistakes in the future, and you will see our newsletter when it comes out and you will laugh and go, we heard Jackie say that on the thing, she's not practicing what she preaches. We all make mistakes, but that's where, if you can see those statistics, it's actually really good to be able to look at that, because it will help you to judge what you're doing. So it's like cutting the noise. I'm going to quickly go back to what Lisa said about, she put in there about Sendinblue, but it didn't integrate with other software. They've done huge updates in the last 12 months. I'm not too sure when you looked at it, Lisa, but if anybody hasn't already got software that they're using, there is something out there called AppSumo. I will find the link and put it in there. Keep an eye on AppSumo, because every now and again, Sendinblue does a thing where you can get a lifetime access to it for less than it would cost you for a year if you had their lowest cost of the paid ones. And that gives you a lot more ability and everything else. So we did do a paid one, but I admit that when we saw the offer came up, we signed up with it for a new email address, a different one, and we signed up to it so that next year when we go onto it, we'll actually go into our free one, and it will save us about £400 a year. Which is really nice. So absolutely, I don't know if Amber's still around, but maybe Amber, could you have a nose and see if you could find the AppSumo link and put it in the chat?
I think Amber, as usual, has been brilliant and has already done that, just as you were saying it, Jackie. Yeah, great minds. Well done, Amber. Thank you.
You are absolutely amazing. There you are. That's fantastic. Right, you can just cut that link off a little bit and just go to the appsumo.com bit if you want to, because it's got one of the links from the tracking link. So feel free to just go to appsumo.com, and we're not getting any kickbacks from it. But it's a really AppSumo is a really useful site. We bought into AirMeet for a lifetime one to be able to use AirMeet for up to 1,000 attendees a month. And its abilities and capabilities and how they're developing it is really, really good. And we use another thing for our software, but we'll tell you about those in another session. So cut the noise, respect people's time and give value. Think about what you're sharing and think about if you, I think the best litmus test, imagine you were receiving it and you were the person who you're sending it to. Does it actually meet any of your needs, or is it just what you're wanting to share? It's a hard one to do. But yeah, just one to think about. Any questions on that from anybody? And Kieran, is there anything?
Yeah, Lisa's just put in the chat that she had to come away from AppSumo as she was like a child in a sweet shop. So that's, you know, positive. But she says that she will see because she has the self-discipline now.
Yeah.
And I've also noticed that she put in the chat a little bit earlier that it's been 3 years since she's used Sendinblue. So she'll give it another look.
Sumo is like a sweet shop, and Lisa, I've had to wean myself off. I look at the emails very carefully now before I go on and check, but we've had some really good things. We've got had our accounting software through from it. We use AirMeet. We've got our team, how we manage the whole team. We've got that through there, which we've just a system we've just integrated. But Sendinblue's been a really good one this year. It will, you know, we'll save money next year. We'll save over £400 next year by doing it. So yeah, be careful and think about what it is. So over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. So this is our last poll question and discussion item, and then there's a bit of time at the end for Q&A, and it's quite a nice exercise. Just have to think about, and I'll publish it as a question, is there a newsletter that you really enjoy? And I find sometimes people need to rack their brains a little bit about this. So while you're doing that, I'll share one of mine that I really enjoy. I'll put it in the chat. It's a newsletter called Brain Pickings. It's actually just changed its name to the Marginalian. So I'll put that in the chat in a minute. And it's written by a wonderful woman called Maria Popova, who is incredibly well read. She knows a lot of, she lives the kind of life that I would aspire to if I lived in an alternate universe. She spends a lot of her time reading great works of literature and great works of art and connecting them to what's happening in the here and now. So she doesn't do it very explicitly, but if there's a big election going on, or if there's been a recent big event in the news, she will connect all of the things that she's read and all of the artworks that she's enjoyed to whatever's happening currently. And she shares a newsletter once a week with one thing that she'd suggest would be a useful thing to read. So say there's been, you know, something like a terrorist incident or something that's been in the news. She won't mention it explicitly, but she'll share a resource around hope, something of that nature. And yeah, it's wonderful. And she will then follow that up with, if this has piqued your interest, here are 4 or 5 other things that you might like to enjoy. So if I've only got 2 minutes that week, I can read, and in 2 minutes I can read something really inspiring. She's done all the work of being incredibly well read and very, very au fait with what's happening in the news, and put those things together for me so I can get something really quick in 2 minutes if I've got an hour, or if it's something that's affecting the work that I'm doing. If it's an incident that's happened, like I work a lot in mental health, if there's been a big mental health news story, I can then probe down further, drill down further, and she will have shared 5 or 6 other resources and links. So that's a really good one. So what's the poll saying? Did I actually publish it while I was chatting away there? Oh yeah, so we have got people saying a newsletter that they really enjoy. Anybody in the chat, Kieran, giving an example?
Yep, Lisa's just given an example of a newsletter that's aimed at virtual assistants, which she mentions that she isn't exactly their market, but she says that they share some amazing admin tips, which have helped her many times. And that it's also just very friendly and chatty and gives her inspiration, which I think is probably something that we have tried to get across in our newsletter, with the friendly and chatty vibe.
Yeah, thank you, Kieran, and thank you, Lisa. Yeah, that's a great example of something that's really pertinent to work. So it sounds like the newsletter that's aimed there at virtual assistants has found its home and you know, really landed well with you, Lisa. So that's a good one. I'll just pop the Marginalian in there as well.
And we've got a comment from Jenny and Kim. Do you want to read those out as well, Kieran?
Sure. Yep. Jenny says that she gets sent the RHS newsletter, but she often doesn't spend the time reading it. But she does find it interesting when she has the time to. Kim says that she enjoys the Centre for Alternative technology in RSPB.
Yeah, great comments. Thank you. And Jenny, so RHS, I think, is Royal Horticultural Society. I'm not a gardening person, but I think that's right. And that's it, isn't it? We can send newsletters and accept that people won't get time to read all of them. So the challenge then is to make sure that when you do get that precious moment of somebody's time, when they have got time to sit and read your newsletter, that they find something that's useful to them.
Just as a comment on that, because I was thinking about the newsletters like the RHS and the RSPB. Sometimes if I don't have time to read that type of thing, but I get to see the photographs that they put in there, just the gift of seeing the beautiful wildlife or the flowers or the something actually picks me up. So the imagery and the graphics could make a difference. So somebody might not have the time to read it, but you might have just made their day through something that you've shared in it on a graphic basis. So never dismiss the power of the graphics to have made a difference in somebody's day. You know, just a thought from me. And here's one that we like, and I'm going to say it only went out a couple of days ago, but it was from Erwin Mitchell. And the reason that I love their newsletter, it's called Turning Point. I really like it. It goes out once a month, but they have some really interesting subjects. And this week we were the top one at the top because we've just started partnering with them for 2 area-based community maps. Well, we've just started with one, and that's the one they're publishing, but actually they just asked to support another one. And what was interesting is that they just put this little snippet. I like the way they do it. They just put this little snippet and they go, take me there. And so you go to find something more. It's very clean and clear and everything else. It's just simple, which I really like. And I love the fact that you can then go to the website and it keeps the newsletter quite short. But actually, when I went on yesterday, when I was doing some more research about it, I then went on and I found some really interesting articles. They are an incredibly caring firm. I was surprised. And they've got an amazing article about the abuse that women have experienced over the, through the lockdowns and everything else. And then they're starting to highlight an organisation called Behind Closed Doors. And I was reading some of it, and I was reading the way that they put it together. And actually, Kieran, it's a bit like your skill as a journalist, to put it in a way and to find these key little nuggets of statistic or something else, but not have it too long. And they've actually got a really good manner. Whoever writes them for them keeps it just to the right length. So I think that's a lesson we can learn from everything, whether we're reading a newsletter, whether we're reading a newspaper, a magazine, or whatever else. What is it about those things, the ones you like? What is that little bit about what you like, and what can you take from it to come into your newsletter or your e-bulletin or something like that? There's something from everything, and you can gain skills from things like that as well. So that's just a little bit from it. You can learn from everything. And just, Kieran, are there any other comments or anything that I'm missing?
Yep, Lisa's just sent a message into the chat about the virtual assistant newsletter she mentioned before. She's provided a link to it. It's thevahandbook.com. And she's also mentioned that she has a folder set up in her emails, and all the newsletters that she's subscribed to will go straight there so that she can work through them easily, which is interesting.
Oh, Lisa, that might be the type of thing that might be interesting if we were to do another session on this, that you could maybe come in and explain to people how they could do that. Because actually, if there is something like that, that might be useful for anybody, that type of thing. I'm there thinking, I want to do that now. And Jenny, I can see, hang on, I'll let you read them out because I'll make mistakes, Kieran.
Yeah, Jenny's mentioned that she usually tries to put photos in their newsletter, and Kim has said that she sometimes finds it off-putting when newsletters are too full of graphics and too busy, which is also something to consider.
So it depends on your audience then. That's another thing. Who's your audience? Em, were you going to say something?
Well, yeah, I had the great privilege of working with Living Options Devon over the last couple of years, which is Devon's disabled persons user-led organisation, and I learned so much about accessibility from the folks there. But yes, I learned a lot about if graphics are too busy, that can actually be a barrier to many people. A very common thing is to have a beautiful photograph of something that's happening and float a bit of text over the top. If you have a visual impairment, you might not be able to see what's there at all. So yeah, that's a whole other webinar, isn't it? Accessibility, but it's a really good point, Kim, that too many graphics can be off-putting and confusing for the eye, and they can also be an accessibility issue as well.
Yeah,
balance is needed.
Really valid point. Yeah, very valuable. I'm so aware of the time now, so we have got last slide before we do the giveaway. So this one is about the tortoise and the hare, and it's about, one, have persistence, slow and steady. Don't get put off if you don't get it opened or you don't feel it was perfect or whatever else. Learn from your audience, number 2, and then 3, adapt. And that's slow and steady and having that persistence. You may not get the results you want for the first 12 months, and that's even if you're sending it out every month for 12 months or something like that. Don't expect it to be overnight. People need to know that it's worth their while spending the time. And if they think you're a flash in the pan that's going to go away overnight, do they want to get to know you as a thing? I mean, Lisa, you said something really interesting when we were around the networking tables. I don't know whether you want to quickly come on for 2 minutes again and say what you did about, when the first lockdown came in and the newsletters you were doing. Right, I can see that you've raised your hand and you're going to be invited in. And this time you know about your camera. Great.
The second time it comes on automatically, so you only have to authorize it once. So I sent out a newsletter every day for several months. I think it was probably even almost up to 6 months, every working day, Monday to Friday, for about 6 months as we went through the pandemic, because I was coordinating and sort of helping all the organisations in our area. And flipping heck, they were short and sweet. What I realised is that, and a lot of what you've said, Jackie, it's just so nice to sort of hear it again. Is to sort of think, well, actually, I was doing okay. But yeah, it was that short and sweet, getting very specific, but I very much kept who I was speaking to in mind. So I knew a lot of people were struggling with just the whole world at the time. So having a nice little introduction that didn't put me under any pressure. I've gone off on a tangent there. What was the specific thing you asked?
No, I think about what you did, because you did it every day for that time. But you mentioned that you got the messages from people that if you missed a day, you were getting people getting in contact with you, checking that you were all right, but B, it became a bit of a pressure. So
the one thing I did to that I got lots and lots of messages back, and obviously I was working from home in my little bedroom, isolated, just like most of the world. So getting those messages back were my lifeline. And I actually cut and paste them in, and I've still got them, and I've got them in a Word document. It's about 4 pages long. But it's just little comments people sent back, how they appreciated it. And when I'm having a really bad day and everything's going wrong, I get that document out and I read it. And that's what keeps me going sometimes, and yeah, it's that positive feedback. And I would say, it just occurred to me then, Jackie, if you get a nice email a nice newsletter from someone, just send them a reply once in a while so that you've really enjoyed reading it.
Yeah, that's so important, Lisa. I've got a folder called Buttercups in my emails, and I pop them in there and I go back to it. I did the same thing in the pandemic with Recovery Devon. We thought we'd share a short video on Facebook every day. And it worked really, really well. But I don't know how long you lasted, but somewhere around the 4-month mark, we realised, at first we thought this might only be a fortnight, didn't we? But we were running out of things to say.
How I got out of it, apart from that I left the job eventually, but that was a year later, is I emailed out to people and says, do you still value this? Would you like it? And I did a poll. Would you prefer it came once a week, twice, and all that sort of thing? And I went at happy medium and weaned people off. And eventually got it back to, I think it was originally it was a half-termly newsletter. So to go from once every half-term to every day was but it was good discipline for me, because it got me into the habit of doing it.
Yeah.
And then so now sending it out monthly, people think, wow, you send a newsletter out every month. I think that's easy.
Oh, what a lovely story. Thank you, Lisa. Well done. Brilliant.
That's brilliant. Thank you ever so much. We're coming to a close, but I promised that we would do a giveaway. So for those of you that are attending, the first 3 people that put their email in the chat box with whether they want Kindle, paperback or audiobook, please can you, if for all of those, they're attached to Amazon. And I know this is going to sound crazy. We're not going to send you anything else, but please can you give us your Amazon, the email address that's attached to your Amazon. And if it's going to be a paperback, then can you email me afterwards to let me know the address so that I get it sent to you, and I will get that organized and sent. And actually, I know that my email address was put in earlier, but it was it wasn't the one that will come to me, because mine is jackie@everyonecares.org.
Ah, that was my mistake. We need Amber on the case, I think.
No, that's all right. Because they are. I put mine in there. Oh, hang on a minute. Cool. So cool. So we have got cool paperback from Kim. Fantastic. Tiff, I've already given. I'll give you one separately. So come on, 2 more people that can put theirs in there. Okay, Tiff, I'll get you one because you're with us. It is a fab book, and audiobooks I love. I learnt one day, I was very privileged to do some training over in the States at one point. And Lisa, you've got one audiobook. Fantastic. We will do that. Amber, could I ask if you could take note of the email addresses so that I make sure I don't lose this, because I would feel very guilty if I did. And they said to me, if you listen to an audiobook and you listen to it when you're traveling on the train for your commute, or when you're cooking meals, or you go out for a walk, and if you do an hour a day each day for, I think it was a year or 18 months, you've got the equivalent of a university degree. I was gobsmacked by it, and audiobooks are just an amazing way to learn. So right, so we've got Kim, we've got Lisa. So Jenny, do you want one?
Yep, she's just put in the chat.
Oh, is it there? Cool. I couldn't see it there. Cool. Oh, thank you, Amber. Really appreciated. Absolutely fantastic. Jenny, I will make sure that you get the paperback. In fact, yeah, I'll get that sent to you. That's no problem. Even though you're in Dawlish, I'll get it sent directly to you. I will get those to you. The audio book for Lisa, you should get that later on this afternoon or tomorrow morning, and then the paperbacks will be ordered. I made sure on Amazon that they had them in stock before we did this today, because that would have been very embarrassing if they hadn't. It's about a 2-hour read, and I would say highlight bits in it, and it's the greatest gift. You will get more from that than you got from this session, let me be very honest. We would also really love to hear from you if there's any other types of training that you would find beneficial. We're happy to do more, to cover other things. We're happy to see if we can get other people that we know to come in if it's a subject we don't know about. We've got quite a few really lovely connections, and if you think that there's something that you know about that you would like to be a co-host on one of these to share with other people and other communities like this, let us know, and we'll host a session for you. You put the case to us about something you'd like to do, we'll get it out to our newsletter list. You can put it out to yours and we'll host it for you. Let us know. How does that sound?
I like the sound of it, Jackie. I'm thinking with my other hats on how I can make use of that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Any other questions? If not, you are welcome to, when we end the session, to go back out to the Jenny, you won't have seen it. There's like a virtual area with virtual tables in, and you can actually then chat to each other, turn your microphones on and cameras if you want to, and chat to each other if there's anything that you want to do. We'll pop back out there, and you can ask us anything that you might not have wanted to have on camera. How does that sound? Because we're exactly at 3 o'clock now, so I wanted to end on time. Is that okay, or any other questions?
No, can't see any questions in the chat unless Kieran's got one.
No, I'm not.
No,
So,
I just see some lovely comments come in. So we've got some buttercups. That's great. It's been a lovely way to spend an hour. Thank you. This has been very helpful. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you very much. And yeah, thanks for being so engaged. I mean, what lovely questions and comments. I feel like I've learned a lot from everybody in attendance today as well. So thank you.
Definitely. Thank you ever so much. And that was the questions and answers. We can do that out at the table if you've got anything else. And there's my contact details, but my contact's in there as well. So don't hesitate. I'm going to pause this session so you can go back, or end this session so you can go out to the networking room. Or if you've gone, thank you so much for spending your time with us. We really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.